DC-9 and a four-seat Piper Cherokee Archer, a single-engine light plane. The jetliner crashed into a quiet neighborhood in Cerritos near Carmenita Road and 183rd Street. The DC-9 exploded upon impact, engulfing homes in a wall of flaming debris. Everyone aboard the two airplanes, now estimated to be at least 67 people, were killed, along with at least 5 victims on the ground. A section of fuselage larger than an automobile crashed through a wall on Carmenita Street. Bodies and parts of bodies lay scattered across the roadway. The collision occurred as the Aeromexico jet was on final approach to Los Angeles International Airport. It also appears now that the Piper Cherokee, with 2 women and 1 man on board, departed from the Torrance Airport. Now, let's go live to Stan Chambers at the scene of the crash. Stan?
How things have stabilized here at the crash scene tonight. Sheriff's deputies have put up a security perimeter around this entire neighborhood that was so devastated today. The street behind me is just littered with wreckage and debris from that DC-9. Earlier this evening, officials did find one of the black boxes in the wreckage here behind me. That grim search for the victims of the plane crash here in the street and in the neighborhood, and also in the burned out shells of the homes, has ended for tonight, but it will begin at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning when members of the National Transportation Safety Board, about 60 of them, will be here on the scene to take over the investigation. This part of the DC-9's fuselage is about the largest part of the Aeromexico DC-9 left. Several blocks away, the next biggest part of the plane, the tail section. It landed on this car and on the front lawn of this house. The owner saw it coming and ran inside. A next-door neighbor saw it and was knocked over by the impact.
Well, all we really seen was the noise, and then I watched my neighbors there run. Then I started to run, and the thing crashed and knocked me down on the lawn. We were watching the black smoke over to the right of us over there, so we knew that's where the plane crashed.
Tell us about the wing coming in. What warning did you have, the tail section there?
I had none, except I heard my neighbor say, "Watch out, here it comes," and he started to run, and I started to run, and then it came down through the tree. And
there were many witnesses to the tragedy today. They couldn't believe what they were seeing.
Well, I was in the house when I heard a low-flying plane coming over. Ran out the backyard, and I heard this sonic boom, like, ran out, looked out, and there was a mushroom going up above in the front of the house.
I was working on my roof, and I heard a boom, and I looked up in the air, and I saw the small plane float down, and it almost didn't look like a plane. It looked like a little kid's model or something like that, but it started floating down, and I looked over, and I saw the big black smoke coming up, and I thought it was my parents' house.
And as I was pulling in my driveway going home this morning, shortly before noon, my daughter yelled at me, "Dad, there's an airplane going down."
We heard a boom, and my friend goes, "What's that?" And we looked up, and we saw it was a DC-9, and we saw it just nose first
it was coming at
spinning
us.
and just went straight down.
We saw it just nosedive.
And we looked at the other way, and we saw the other plane just fall in the schoolyard.
Neighbors were yelling at us to run because pieces were falling everywhere.
The whole top was cut off, and it was heading south. The nose was heading towards the beach, and it was this. The bodies, if you don't mind me saying, were just, they looked like they could survive, but the heads were decapitated.
Everyone in the neighborhood still stunned tonight, still can't believe the terrible tragedy that happened. The burned out section is directly behind us, behind the brick walls, and a whole center area there, 10 homes completely destroyed, other homes badly damaged. And the main concern, how many people on the ground were killed in this crash. We won't know that figure till tomorrow. Officials are saying that 5 people have been killed on the ground. They're fearful that toll will rise. The officers will be here, of course, throughout tonight. There'll be a very busy day tomorrow as the search for more bodies continues. Al, that's our live report from the crash scene. Now back to you.
Okay, Stan, the crash scene does cover a large area of the neighborhood, and the view from the air gives a perspective of what happened. Marta Waller reports from Jet Copter 5.
From the air, the scene looked as though a bomb had been dropped on the neighborhood. It appeared that all the houses caught fire at once after the crash. Many were still smoldering throughout the afternoon. The only indication that a jetliner was the cause of all this destruction was the piece of an engine that fell on the street. Debris was scattered throughout the housing tract, and spectators lined the streets along the police barricades. Several blocks away, the Piper Cherokee crashed into the playing field of the Cerritos Elementary School. It appeared to be upside down on the field, and yellow tarps covered the bodies of the 3 people killed in that plane. From our vantage point, Jet Copter 5, the crash site looks like a war zone. There are yellow tarps littered all over the streets, marking where bodies were thrown upon impact. From Jet Copter 5, Marta Waller, Channel 5, News at 10.
At Los Angeles International Airport, Aeromexico officials say they talked with the pilot of the doomed plane just 1 minute before the crash. Of course, there was no hint of any pending danger at that time. Steve Lentz reports friends, relatives, and employees were shocked by the news of the tragic crash.
At the Bradley International Terminal, relatives of passengers comforted each other after learning of the crash of Flight 498. Sam Espinoza, who said his uncle was on the plane, hugged a friend before leaving the terminal. At the airline ticket counter, another family quickly was taken to an airline VIP lounge, which had been set up for relatives and friends who were meeting the flight. Aeromexico officials said a priest was called to help grieving family members who remained in seclusion throughout the afternoon. Others were confused, not knowing whether or not their relatives were on the flight, which originated at 6:15 this morning, LA time, in Mexico City. At the time of the crash, 6 hours later, the plane had made 3 more stops en route to LAX to pick up additional passengers.
6 from Guadalajara, 31 from Loreto, and 19 from Tijuana. The plane had 6 crew members. There were 4 flight attendants and 2 pilots.
Airline officials could not immediately determine how many American or Mexican citizens were on the plane, only that most surnames were Spanish and a majority appeared to live in the U.S. Adding to the confusion, several passengers boarded the plane as standbys, so their names were not on the original passenger manifest, changing the totals from 51 passengers and crew members at first thought to have died up to 64 this evening. The DC-9 twin-engine jet, which crashed, was similar to this one, and Aeromexico District Manager Rodolfo Casparias said a witness on the ground gave this version of the crash.
No, there are certain people and who witnessed this thing, and they saw the plane hitting the tail part of the jet.
This evening, relatives are being helped by the Salvation Army and Red Cross. The last Aeromexico crash was 10 years ago. It did not occur in this country. According to Aeromexico, the LAX tower has told them that they were in control of their flight 1 to 2 minutes before the crash. It was descending from 7,000 feet through 6,200, and both planes showed up on the radar screen. However, the tower was not in communication with the small plane. According to one source here at LAX, the town of Loreto, where 31 people got on that plane, is a popular Baja fishing village, and many of those people could be Americans. At LAX, Steve Lentz, Channel 5 News at 10.
Today's crash devastated the quiet Cerritos neighborhood. The residents' reaction, fear and horror. Giselle Fernandez has that part of the story.
They just never believed tragedies like this one could ever happen in their small neighborhood. The horror and shock read on all their faces. Neighbors, family, and friends huddled closely together, hardly breathing a word.
As soon as we heard, we called them all up to see if they're okay, and it's just like, oh, I'm so glad everyone's okay. It's just, oh, I'm so nervous. Can't believe it. Right here, you know, in Cerritos.
This man lost his home. When he heard the thunder of the crash, he escaped with his family.
We heard this thunder. We thought it was thunder. And all of a sudden, I said, that ain't thunder. I told her, hit the floor. So she hit the floor, and all of a sudden I could hear this airplane just, you know, you can tell it's an airplane just coming down. And as soon as we heard it hit the back end of our bedroom there, I just told her, hey, grab the kids, let's get out of here. That's when everything just exploded at the same time we were running out.
But some don't know the whereabouts of other neighbors or relatives whose homes were also destroyed. The anxiety and tension was great.
We tried to call them on the phone. We couldn't get through. I parked my car at Alpha Beta and I walked in. And of course I was very relieved. My little granddaughter come running up and saying, Grandma, we're all right.
Yes, I was just wondering if my uncle was okay. He lives over here a couple of blocks, but it's over on Black Star Lane, and I think he's probably okay.
And we've been trying to call down, and you can't get down there. You know, you can't get around that way. I've tried to walk around that way and this way, and we can't find out.
For the children, the horror of it all was hardly comprehensible.
I'm scared about it and stuff. I don't know what happened to them. There were some good friends of me. I played baseball for them and stuff, and I just don't know. I was just scared. I was in shock. I couldn't believe it happened or anything.
Just around the corner on the streets that weren't hit, the mood was solemn and even morose. There were just clusters of neighbors gathering at all ends of the block, talking and trying to figure out who of their friends and families or neighbors may have been hurt in this tragedy. The only real sounds were those of helicopters repeatedly flying overhead and the commands in a distance from emergency personnel asking for help. By nightfall, the Cerritos neighborhood was still in shock. Many thanked God their homes weren't hit and prayed for those who were. Giselle Fernandez, Channel 5, News at 10.
Today's crash is the second this year involving a jetliner owned by the Mexican government. On the 31st of March, a Mexicana Airlines Boeing 727 bound for Los Angeles crashed into a mountain about 60 miles northwest of Mexico City. All 167 people aboard were killed, including 9 Americans, in what remains as Mexico's worst aviation disaster. The pilot sent a radio message shortly after takeoff that he was having pressurization problems and was making an emergency descent. Flight controllers lost all contact with the flight 14 minutes after it left Mexico City. A government investigation revealed the crash was caused by an overheated tire that exploded. That touched off fires in the aircraft's fuel, hydraulic, and electrical systems. There are some similarities between today's mid-air collision and the crash of a PSA jetliner and a light plane over San Diego 8 years ago. In that collision, a single-engine Cessna and the jetliner collided as the jet was approaching Lindbergh Field. 144 people died in that crash. All 135 aboard the airliner, 2 aboard the Cessna, and 7 victims on the ground. It was, at that time, the worst domestic air disaster in United States history. We will have further coverage for you of today's mid-air crash just a little later in this news hour. I want to show you something that I've not seen reported anywhere else to you this day. I have brought some official aeronautical charts of that area and the critical questions that this collision raises as to why the 2 planes were in an area of restricted airspace. I'll have those charts for you and show you the nature of that situation. But first, young people go on the rampage in Huntington Beach. Police are calling it a full-scale riot. We'll have complete coverage after this brief break.